Notes 8.5 solving equations with variables on each side. The objective is to solve equations with variables on each side. The Common Core state standards are listed and the mathematical practices. The steps to solve. The first thing you want to do is change any subtraction to adding the opposite to make it easier to solve. Write an equation with variables on one side, solve the two-step or one-step equation, and always check your solution. So we're going to solve the following equations algebraically by showing all steps, then check. So on the first problem over here, we have 3x is equal to x plus 8. Whenever you have a problem with unequal terms on each side, we have one term on the left and two on the right, you always want to get rid of the term that is not by itself. So we want to subtract x on both sides. We can also put a 1 in front of that x, so we're really subtracting 1x on both sides. So we're on the left, we have 2x is equal to, and the 1x minus x becomes 0, and we're left with 8. Now we're solving the one-step equation. So we're going to get the x by itself, so we're going to divide both sides by 2, so x is equal to 4. So to check the work on this problem, we're going to put x on the left and on the right. We're going to replace it with a 4. So it's 3 times 4 equals 4 plus 8. 3 times 4 is 12, and 4 plus 8 is equal to 12. So since both sides are equal to 12, 4 is the correct solution. Number 2, 7x is equal to 5x plus 8. 5x is not alone, so we're going to subtract 5x on both sides. So we're left with 2x is equal to 8. One-step equation, divide both sides by 2, and we're left with x is equal to 4. So if we substitute in our 4 on the left side, 7 times 4 is 28, equals 5 times 4, which is 20, plus 8 is 28. So both sides equal 28, so 4 is the correct solution. In number 3, we have 3x minus 2 is equal to x. So our term that's alone is the x, so we want to minus 3x from both sides. We can put a 1 in front of the x also. When we do 3x minus 3x, we bring down the subtract 2, which really now is a negative 2 because we can change that to adding the opposite. And then 1 plus a negative 3x gives you negative 2x. Divide both sides by negative 2. So on the right-hand side, you're left with x, because negative 2 divided by negative 2 gives you a 1. And on the left-hand side, negative 2 divided by negative 2 is 1. So x is equal to 1. Showing out your work, to check it, 3 times 1 is 3, minus 2 is 1. On the right-hand side, 1 times 1 is 1, so both sides are equal to 1, so 1 is your solution. Number 4 is 3x plus 2 is equal to 4x minus 1. We have variables on both sides. We have an equal amount of terms on both sides. So we can get rid of either the 3x or the 4x. I like to always get rid of the variables on the right-hand side. So my answers look like 1 and 2, where it says x equals. If I get rid of the 3x, I'm going to have my answer look like number 3, where it says 1 equals x. So I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. I'm going to do a little changing to adding the opposite. On the right-hand side, because my 4x minus 4x gives me 0, I'm left with a negative 1. And on the left-hand side, because I have 3 minus 4x, I'm going to change it to 3 plus a negative 4x. I'm going to take the sign of the larger number and subtract, and I'm going to bring down my plus 2. Now I have a two-step equation. I still want to get the x by itself, so I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. So I'm left with negative 1x. 2 minus 2 gives me 0. So I'm just left with my negative 1x on the left. And on the right-hand side, it says -1 minus 2, or I can change it to adding the opposite, so it's -1 plus a -2 to give me -3. Now I'm going to divide both sides by -1. -1 divided by -1 is 1x, or just x, and -3 divided by -1 gives me a +3. Number 5 is 2 4/10 plus a is equal to 2 5/10 a minus 4 5/10. Since we're dealing with decimals and I need to get one of my variables to one side, I'm going to put a 1.0 in front of the a. Now I can subtract the 2 5/10 a from both sides. So I'm left with 2 4/10. And now I have 1.0 minus 2.5, or I can change it to adding the opposite. So I would take the sign of the larger and subtract to give me -1 5/10 a equals 2.5a minus 2.5a cancels out. We can also change the subtraction to adding the opposite. So we're left with -4 5/10 a. Now, we still need to get to the variable to one side, so we're going to subtract 2 4/10 from both sides. So the 2 4/10 cancels out, so you're left with -1.5a equals, and we're subtracting the 2 4/10 or adding a negative. So we have same sign, so we're going to keep the sign and add. And we need to get the a to one side, so divide both sides by the -1.5a. So on the left-hand side, it cancels out, and we're left with a equals a negative divided by a negative is positive, and 6.9 divided by 1.5 is 4.6. On number 6, we have 1/2 p minus 15 is equal to 3/4 p minus 3. We're going to deal with fractions, and we need to get the fractions to one side. And if you look at your denominators, you have a 2 and a 4. So let's change these so we can have common denominators. So I'm going to rewrite it. So my common denominators would be 4. So I'm going to change my first fraction to 2/4 p minus 15 is equal to 3/4 p minus 3. I can also change subtraction to adding the opposite. And now let's get rid of the 2/4. So subtract 2/4 on both sides. That's both sides of your equal sign. So now the 2/4 p's cancel out. And you're left with -15 is equal to 1/4 p plus a -3. Now we're going to add 3 to both sides. The 3's cancel out. Opposites cancel out, so now we're left with 1/4 p is equal to, and we have to take the sign of the larger and subtract. So we end up getting -12. Multiply both sides by 4 to get the p by itself. So the 4's cancel out, so you're left with p on the right, and on the left you're left with 4 times a -12, which is -48. Number 7. -5y minus 14 is equal to 6 minus 5y. The first thing that you should do is change subtraction to adding the opposite. You want to get your variables to one side first. So we're going to add 5y to both sides. But since we have a -5y on both sides, they both cancel out to 0. So we're left with -14 is equal to 6. -14 does not equal 6. This has no solution. So we can write null set or no solution. This is a special case. This means that no matter what you substitute in for y, the left side is never going to equal the right side. Number 8. 7 minus 3x is equal to -3x plus 7. Start by changing subtraction to add in the opposite. Get your variable to one side, so we're going to add a 3x to both sides. Again, this is another special case that when we add the 3x to both sides, they cancel out. This time we get 7 is equal to 7. This means all numbers work. It means that no matter what you put in for the x, the left side will always equal the right side. A real-world problem using variables on both sides. A personal trainer charges a one-time fee of $60 plus $25 for each individual session. So that means $60 plus $25 for each. That means multiplication, individual session. We don't know what that is, so we can call it X. A fitness club charges a yearly fee of $450 plus $10 for each session with a personal trainer. So that translates to $450 plus $10 for each session. Again, we don't know how many sessions, so we'll call it X. We're going to write and solve an equation to determine for what number of sessions, there's your unknown, the cost will be equal. So we have 60 plus 25x is equal to 450 plus 10x. We need to get our variable to one side. Doesn't matter which one you get rid of. We'll subtract 10x from both sides. The 10x cancels on the right, so we're left with 60 plus 15x is equal to 450. Now we're down to a two-step equation. We're going to subtract 60 from both sides. The 60 cancels out. We're left with 15x is equal to 390. Divide both sides by 15. And we're left with x is equal to 26 sessions. So this means that the cost of both the personal trainer and the fitness club to have paying the same amount, they have to go to 26 sessions. We can substitute in and check to see if it works. So we substitute in the 26 for x, and we would have 60 plus 25 times 26, and 25 times 26 is 650. And we add that to the 60, we give 710. On the right side, we have 450 plus 10 times 26. So it's 450 plus 260. And when we add that up, we get 710. So that since the left side is equal to the right side, which is $710, they would have to attend 26 sessions to pay the same amount, which is $710.